Please don't skip ahead yet. Hi, this is your friendly neighborhood 80 slasher librarian, JnBLaRue. Just need a moment of your time. A lot of people don't know, but we're not able to monetize the channel here on YouTube due to the fact that the copyright holders of the books I narrate, the movies we riff, they get the ad revenue, and also being a partner on YouTube involves a lot of rules and censorship, and to do so would make it where a lot of the content, the audiobooks, the riffs, would have to be heavily censored or deleted completely. So we depend on amazing slashaholics like you to help fund the channel and keep it going and growing for years to come. And there's several fun ways to do that. You could join our Patreon right up there. And as a patron, you can join for as low as like $2, $5, $10 a month, on up as high as you want, and enjoy a lot of cool gifts like free ebooks, early access, exclusive content, even voicing characters and audiobooks here on the channel. You could also go to our PayPal and use the QR code right there, and you can donate directly to the channel. We see all donations and we appreciate all of them. If you don't want to use the QR code or don't know how, you can use our PayPal email address, which will be in the description below and the pinned comment, as well as our Cash App donation username. And a fun way to help the channel is through our Cameo, right down there. On Cameo, you can ask for a birthday video, anniversary video. You can ask us to sing a song or something, or ask us questions, and you can get a video from me, Alex, Shawn, Master Evil, Mother Evil, the Rodeo Clown, any character from any show on the channel, or any character that I've voiced in the audiobooks. It's a fun way to help the channel. It's only $10 a video, and we'll have a lot of fun doing that. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed tonight's content. Be excellent to each other. Please consider helping the channel. And always remember, the sun never sets on those who ride into it. Thank you.
And now, Slashaholics, the conclusion of Child's Play, the novelization by Jeremy Terry. Chapter 20. The Ugly Doll Comes Home. Night had fallen over the windy city, and the first stars of the evening were shining in the cloudless sky as Andy sprinted around the corner of the alleyway he had been hiding in and ran for the entrance to the apartment building. There was no one to take notice of him. The streets of the city seemed empty to Andy, in spite of the noise of the traffic a block over. Those people would be no help to him if Chucky jumped out of the shadows with his red knife and wicked smile. Andy had never felt more alone in his young life. He burst through the lobby doors and headed for the stairs, dismissing the slow elevator out of hand. He surged up the steps, taking them two at a time. And he did not slow until he stood panting before his own apartment's door. Quickly, he lifted the potted plant that sat in the corner of the hall and withdrew the spare key his mommy had left there for an emergency just like this. He fumbled the key into the lock with shaking, impatient fingers and stepped inside, locking the door behind him. He turned his back to the door and leaned against it, taking in the dark apartment. His mommy had left the light on in the living room and kitchen. Andy was glad she had. The thought of sneaking around the dark home in complete midnight black terrified him. There would be far too many places for Chucky to hide. He pushed away from the door and walked down the hall, turning through the archway into the living room, where he proceeded to lock every window. Satisfied, he stepped into the kitchen and made sure that the plywood was secure over the broken window Aunt Maggie had fallen through. It was so he walked back into the hall and jogged to his bedroom. He checked the windows there, and then went to his knees in front of the toy chest in his closet. He flung the lid open, hard enough for it to bounce back at him off the wall. He stopped it with his hand, and rummaged through the box until he found what he was looking for, his small wooden baseball bat. He felt the weight of the thing in his hands and nodded. Chucky would have his hands full when he came. Andy clutched the bat to his chest, and sat down against the toy box to wait for the front door to open. Would it be Chucky come to kill him, like he had Dr. Ardmore? Or would it be his mommy come to save the day? He hoped it turned out to be her. Little Johnny Carpenter crossed the street in front of the apartment building, his heart alive with wonder at the miracle clutched in his arms. It really was too bad that Chucky already belonged to another boy, but Chucky had said they could be friends and play together sometime. After all, Johnny lived 2 buildings down the block from the one that Chucky's best friend lived in. He stopped with the foot on the bottom step, leading up to the door, and turned his head to whisper in the good guy's ear. "Is this the one?" "This is it. Thanks a ton, kid. You're a real pal." Johnny giggled, and then stopped when he heard footsteps approaching behind him. "Hey, Johnny," called Mr. Johnson, waving to him. Mr. Johnson was dressed in a heavy brown coat and fur-lined hat that Johnny knew hid a slickly bald head. His wife, Mrs. Johnson, walked beside him, with their evil Yorkie dog named Fluffy held in her arms. The dog began to growl as they grew nearer, its black eyes locked on the boy. "Hello, Mr. Johnson," Johnny said. "Shouldn't you be getting home? Your mother's going to worry." "I'm about to," Johnny replied. "Chucky wants me to drop him off here first." "Chucky, huh?" Mrs. Johnson said, stopping beside Johnny and leaning closer to get a look at the doll. "Isn't he one of those, whatchamacallits, a good boy doll?" "He's a good guy doll." Fluffy growled deeper in his little chest as a strange scent reached his doggy nose. There was something bad, something that could hurt his person. He lunged forward, nearly jumping out of Mrs. Johnson's arms and snapping his jaws an inch from the doll's red hair. As if in response, the doll twisted its head to the left and seemed to stare at the dog. "Wanna play?" Chucky said, his voice low and menacing, not like the normal voice of the good guy dolls that Mrs. Johnson had seen on commercials. Fluffy cringed back from it, all anger gone from his tiny frame, replaced by a tremor that ran through his whole furry body. The Yorkie yipped and twisted around to bury his snout beneath his mistress's arm. Mr. Johnson didn't seem to notice. He reached out to pat Johnny on the head. "Chucky wants to be dropped off, huh? Well, you make sure you do that quick before you catch a cold out here." "I will," Johnny said. "Good night, Mr. Johnson." "Good night," he said, walking on with a perplexed Mrs. Johnson at his side. Had she really heard the doll speak like that? Surely not. Maybe its batteries were just running low. That had to be it, right? Johnny watched until they were out of sight and then bent over to set Chucky down on the sidewalk. Chucky stretched and then pointed down the street. "Thanks again, sport. You run on home now. There's some bad people on the streets tonight." Chucky laughed crazily and walked up the steps. Johnny watched him go, wondering what was so funny. He shrugged and started for home as Chucky yanked the entrance door open and slipped inside. It was nice to have a new friend. Chucky felt a strange sensation in his chest as he settled back against the wall of the elevator to wait for it to make its slow ascent to the top floor, where his friend to the end waited for him. It was strange but frighteningly familiar, like a small bird fluttering beneath his plastic skin. "Is that a goddamn heartbeat I'm feeling? This can't be happening. I've got to finish this now before I become some freakish midget for the rest of my goddamn life. Hell, dear old Mom would just laugh herself to death all over again if she could see me now. Well, fuck her and fuck this. I'm coming for you, Andy boy. I hope you're ready because I'm done playing Mr. Good Guy." A wrinkled, liver-spotted hand reached through the closing elevator door and pulled it open so that an elderly man and his wife could slip inside. Great, thought Chucky. The Geritol kids are slowing me down. I hope you both get explosive diarrhea and have a heart attack while shitting your diapers. "Look, Glenn," said the old woman, pulling on her henpecked-looking husband. "Some child left their doll in the elevator." Glenn glanced down with a sigh and saw Chucky, before lifting his head and pulling his arm away from the woman. "Just you leave it alone, Brenda. Whoever left it in there will come back to look for it. The elevator doors finally closed, and the car began its slow rise. Chucky glanced at the panel and saw that the couple were getting off one floor below his. Perfect, he thought. I was afraid I was going to have to sit here and take another ride in the elevator before I could move. Are you sure? Brenda asked. I'm positive, Glenn responded, as the doors slid open and they stepped out onto the landing. Brenda paused, looking back down at him with a grimace. What an ugly doll, she remarked as she walked away, and the elevator started moving again. Chucky gave her a double-barrel middle finger salute. Fuck you. The Barclay apartment was quiet as a tomb, yet it seemed to crackle with anticipation, as if a large amount of energy was cascading out of control to some apocalyptic final release. Then the soft sound of ash falling like sand from the chimney broke the silence. Chucky appeared a second later, dropping down on top of the fake logs that hid the fireplace gas burners from view. He quickly shook the worst of the black dust from himself and then kicked the fireplace grate into the center of the living room, where it came to rest with a clatter against the coffee table. I'm sure the kid heard that, Chucky thought, as he drew the red and silver knife from inside his clothes and stalked down the hallway towards Andy's closed bedroom door. Well, it doesn't matter if the brat knows I'm coming or not. He isn't getting away from me this time. He reached the door, twisted the handle, and pushed it open. It swung inward easily, surprising him for a moment. He figured the kid would have tried to barricade the door. Maybe he'd given up. That would be easier, if not as fun. Chucky much preferred the idea of Andy going to his fate with shrieks of terror. Chucky started to step forward and then froze when he heard the subtle creak of a floorboard to his right. Oh, so that's what you're doing, sport. You set an old-fashioned ambush for your old friend to the end. Nice try, asshole. Chucky tensed his legs, took a breath, and leapt through the opening. Andy was there, standing beside the door, with a small baseball bat in his hands. Andy swung the bat, but he was far too slow, and the ash handle struck the doorframe and was jarred free from his hands. Surprise! Chucky shouted as Andy ran from the room and ducked into the kitchen. Chucky started after him and then looked down at the knife in his hand. It really wasn't the best tool for the job at hand. It wouldn't do to carve up his fresh new body right before he took up residence, after all. He pocketed the knife and bent to pick up the baseball bat. It was on the small side, but he thought it would do the trick just fine. Andy had moved into the living room. Chucky could hear his panicked breathing and the shuffle of his shoes on the thick pile carpet. He stalked forward and glanced through the archway to see Andy facing the kitchen, oblivious to Chucky's presence at the other door. Ready or not, here I come. He sprinted into the room with that bat raised over his head and launched himself from the couch. Batter up! Chucky cried with glee as he brought the bat down on the base of Andy's skull. There was a solid thud, and the boy crumpled to the floor in a heap. Good, Chucky said, tossing the bat away and kneeling down beside Andy's head. He placed one hand on Andy's forehead and the other on the center of Andy's chest. He felt the beat of the boy's heart, the twin of the one that fluttered now in his own chest. Goodbye, good guy. Hello, brand new world. He began to chant. Chapter 21. Confrontation. Mike slammed on the brakes, bringing the unmarked police car to a halt halfway on the sidewalk in front of Karen's building, and jumped out without taking the time to turn the engine off. Karen joined him near the front stairs leading up to the lobby door, and then ran into him when he suddenly stopped in mid-stride. "What is it, Mike?" He put a hand to the back of his neck and felt the hair standing on end. He knew this feeling, had felt it before, and had dreamt it almost every night since. Slowly he tilted his head to look at the once cloudless sky, and felt his bowels turn to liquid. Where there had been stars shining in the firmament, there was now roiling clouds building over the building, their black sides undulating as if they were filled with snakes and maggots. Lightning flashed across the surface of the mass like so many veins full of iridescent blood. "It sees me!" Mike's mind screamed in abject horror. "It remembers me!" Karen's hands found his and squeezed hard, drawing him back to her. He shuddered as he ran a hand over his face to wipe away the sudden sheen of cold sweat that had broken out over his skin.
"It's like that night at the toy store,"
he said.
"It's like the night Ray died. It's happening all over again."
The import of his words struck home, and Karen pulled him forward up the stairs. "Come on, he started the chant!" They took the stairs, Mike passing her thanks to his longer strides. They reached the top floor, Mike drawing his revolver as he ran. They came to the door and found it locked. A frightfully familiar voice drifted to them from inside the apartment. Chucky beginning to shout the strange, foreboding words. "Ah, day, dewey, JnBLaRue, give me the power, I beg of you." Karen bent to retrieve the hidden key from beneath the plant. Mike shouted her down. There was no time. He charged forward and rammed the door with his shoulder, shattering the lock and the frame on the first strike. His momentum carried him forward, and he fell down on the floor, the gun slipping from his grasp. Karen rushed by him into the living room and saw Chucky staring at her with hate-filled, venomous eyes. She charged forward and yanked the demonic doll from the semi-conscious Andy, lifting him into the air, trying to hold him tight, but it was like trying to hold on to a greased pig. Chucky twisted around in her hands, shouting obscenities. He lunged his head down and sank his little teeth into the side of Karen's neck, shaking his head back and forth like a dog. Karen felt blood begin to flow and began to scream. Mike found his feet and rushed in, his gun raised, but dropped it back down into its holster when he saw there was no clear shot. Instead, he ran to Karen and pulled the flailing doll free, tossing it against the wall by the fireplace. Chucky bounced to his feet like a cat and ran for them, pulling his knife from inside his clothes as he came. Mike lashed out with his foot, trying to kick Chucky, but Chucky dodged easily and flicked the knife out to draw a deep slash across Mike's lower leg. Mike fell to his knees, and Chucky stabbed the knife into Mike's shoulder before sprinting out of the room, cackling madly.
"Oh, God."
Mike moaned as he pulled the ornate blade from his back and dropped it to the carpet before stuffing a handkerchief beneath his shirt to staunch the flow of blood darkening his jacket. Karen was on her knees beside Andy, who was blinking now and looking around in a daze. He saw the bite wound on her neck and was satisfied that it wasn't life-threatening. He lifted his wounded leg and drew a small semi-automatic .25 caliber pistol from an ankle holster and held it out to her. "What's this for?" Karen asked, taking the gun with 2 fingers like it was something dirty.
"I'm gonna find the little bastard,"
Mike replied.
"That's so you can protect yourself if I don't get him."
"Mike, wait a minute, I don't know how to use this." Mike ignored her protests and limped out into the hallway, drawing his service revolver again and sweeping the shadowed passage with it. Nothing moved. He moved along the hall and glanced into the kitchen and found it empty. He looked towards Andy's bedroom and noticed a tiny handprint left in ash on the surface of the door to Karen's room, and nodded to himself.
"I've got you now, Ray,"
he said. He moved forward and rushed through the door into her room, trying to look everywhere at once. He saw more black ash on the bed skirt and dropped painfully to the floor. He cocked the revolver's hammer back, stilled himself, and lifted the skirt to look under the bed. Running footsteps behind him, Mike sat up, saw Chucky charging from the bathroom with a small wooden baseball bat in his hands. Mike tried to lift his hands to block the coming blow, but it was too late. Chucky rammed the end of the bat into Mike's sternum, knocking the breath from him. Mike bent over, gasping for air, and Chucky brought the bat down on the back of Mike's head. The detective crumpled to the carpet, unconscious. "That's right, Mikey," Chucky crooned, raising the bat again, intent on finishing Mike off. "You should have never messed with me." "Leave him alone, you sawed-off ginger midget!" Karen shouted as she stepped into the room with her gun raised. The bat started down, and she pulled the trigger. The small bullet striking Chucky in the leg and sending him spinning across the room. "Take that, you little bastard!" she yelled in triumph, aiming the gun at the center of the doll's chest. This was it. The nightmare was about to end. She squeezed the trigger. Nothing. Chucky got to his feet laughing, the bat still in his hands. "What's wrong? Gun jam?" Screaming, Chucky ran for her, and Karen fled back down the hall into the living room, where Andy was sitting in a fog. She had to find something to defend herself with. The knife Chucky used to stab Mike. Where was the knife? She then saw it beside the couch and moved towards it. "Not so fast, bitch!" Chucky shouted. He raised the bat over his head and threw it, striking Karen in the back of her knees, sending her tumbling face first into the carpet. She groaned in pain and tried to stand and was driven back down as Chucky latched onto her back. She felt his hands reach around her throat, seeking to choke and kill, smelled his fetid breath as he screamed inarticulate hate into her ear. Her gaze fell on the fireplace grate on the ground near her, and a plan came together in her mind. "Get off me!" she shouted as she grabbed one of his thin wrists and flung him through the air into the open fireplace. He struck the back and nearly bounced back out of it. She had 2 seconds less. She surged to her feet, grabbing the fallen grate and slamming it back in place just as Chucky had risen. If his previous fury could be called a storm, it was nothing in comparison to the hurricane he unleashed now. He pushed against the barrier, kicked it, shook it with his strong hands. It was all Karen could do to hold him in. "Oh God," she thought, "I don't know how long I can keep this up. Does he even get tired? Please let him be human enough for fatigue." "You bitch!" Chucky yelled. "You're dead. Do you hear me? You're gonna wish you were never born a long time before I get through with you." Karen glanced to the small knob on the side of the hearth, the one that turned on the gas to the fireplace. She planted her right foot to steady herself and kicked out with her left over and over again, finally managing to twist the knob. The faint scent of gas began to waft from the fireplace. She tried to reach above her for the fake bundle of yarn that contained the matches and fumbled them onto the ground out of her reach. "What now? I can't reach them without moving." She turned her head, saw Andy watching her with wide eyes. "Andy," she called, "help me, get the matches." Andy moved to her side as fast as his little feet could carry him, and he bent to pick up one of the matches. He pushed the red tip of the match against the rough brick mantel, and suddenly Chucky grew quiet. Andy looked down and saw the doll staring up at him with big blue eyes and a big smile. "Andy, no," Chucky crooned. "We're friends to the end, right?" "This is the end, friend," he said, striking the match and tossing it into the fireplace. There was a whomp as the gas ignited, and then Chucky was engulfed in bright orange flames. "No, no, no, God!" he screamed as the fire reached his hair and turned him into a flailing candle. The heat was too much. Karen grabbed Andy and they backed away, watching as Chucky kicked the grate out and collapsed onto the carpet. Karen had never heard such pain in a person's voice before, though she would hear it every time she closed her eyes to sleep for a long time to come. Chucky rolled over and over, trying to put out the flames that melted and blackened his plastic skin. Finally, his struggles grew slower, and then stopped as the last of the flames flickered and died, leaving behind a smoking husk. "Is it over? Did we do it?" Mike's raised voice from her bedroom startled her, and she nearly jumped out of her skin. Turning from Chucky, she picked Andy up and the two of them walked into the hallway. They found Mike laying on his back, his pant leg and shirt soaked with blood from the knife wounds, and a new trickle of blood from a gash on the back of his head.
I heard shouting.
He said, trying to sit up.
What happened? Where's Chucky?
Karen put a hand to his chest and pushed him back down. "Don't worry. I took care of him. Now let's take care of you. Andy, run and get me the first aid kit from under the kitchen sink, okay?" Andy nodded and walked back out into the hallway and through the archway into the kitchen. He glanced to his right as he went and froze. Chucky wasn't there, just a blackened patch of carpet and scraps of burnt clothing. "Mommy!" Andy called as he began to back away towards the archway. "Chucky is gone!" Karen hadn't heard him. She shouted for him to hurry up with the first aid kit. He turned and ran for the hallway, panic driving every thought from his young mind, save that he must get to his mommy and the policeman. They would know what to do. He passed through the arch, twisted to his right, and then felt his feet catch on something. He tumbled to the floor with a grunt and rolled over to see what had tripped him. Fear stole his voice. The creature that stalked towards him seemed freshly born from the pits of hell. Smoke still drifted from the remnants of the good guy overalls that hung from the melted and charred figure. Only one blue eye remained, staring balefully from a socket that had melted around it. Where the other orb had been was a black void as deep as the abyss that stretched endlessly beyond the stars. It came slowly, one step at a time, keeping pace with Andy's slow crawl backwards. There was no rush now. It held the red and silver knife and what was left of a hand that had melted splinters sticking out of charred plastic fingers. It was invincible. It was immortal, and it would have what it wanted. "Hello, Andy," Chucky said, raising the knife over his mostly hairless head. "Mommy!" Andy cried, scrambling to his feet and running into his mother's room. Karen saw him enter and saw what followed, her heart leaping into her throat. She ran to the door and slammed it, just as Chucky managed to get one arm through. "How can he still be so strong after everything we've done to him?" Karen thought, as she pushed with all of her might against the immense counter pressure. She felt her strained muscles beginning to tremble at the edge of exhaustion. "Give me the boy and I'll let you live. Do you hear me? Give me the boy." Karen found a last reserve of energy and pushed as hard as she could against the door. Chucky screamed in rage and felt pain and withdrew his arm from the door. Karen felt it latch shut, looked for a lock, and remembered that the door did not have one. Running footsteps echoed in the bathroom, and Karen felt fresh terror. He was going to come through the open bathroom door. She ran past Mike and Andy and slammed the door shut just as Chucky reached it. He yelled in fury, and then Karen felt the doorknob turning in her hand. She bore down, felt the door shake with a sudden impact, and screamed as the red and silver knife blade erupted through the wood inches from her nose. She jerked back as far as she could and still keep her hold on the knob. The knife withdrew and was rammed through again and again, coming ever nearer to her head. "I'm going to die. He's going to stick that knife in my ear in front of my son." The blade flashed again, centimeters from her eye, and then the pressure was gone from the door. She heard the footsteps in the hall too fast. There was no time to get to that door, and Mike wasn't up to helping. The door burst open, and the abomination charged in with flailing arms and cutting blade, ready to take her life and then her only child's very soul. Karen grabbed Andy by the hand, and they ran through the bathroom and out into the hallway. She kicked something heavy just outside her bedroom door as they ran and looked down to see Mike's revolver spinning like a top along the floor in front of them. It came to rest by the kitchen archway. She scooped it up and spun around to face their Harrier, shielding Andy with her body. "For the last time, give me the boy," Chucky said as he stalked towards them. His remaining eyes shone with malevolent hatred. "Give him to me, or I'll cut the nose right off your face." "Fuck you," Karen said, raising the big .38 revolver and pulling the trigger. The bullet flew true, taking him in the shoulder. He twitched but did not fall. He was so close now, he would not be denied. Karen took aim and fired again. The bullet passing just below his chin, sending his whole head rolling backwards down the hall like a macabre bowling ball. The headless thing kept coming. "Impossible! Oh, please just lay down and die already." Another squeeze, and the gun bucked in her hand. There was a puff of stuffing as his left leg parted ways with his body. Chucky fell forward and began to crawl, the blade of the knife scraping furrows in the hardwood floor of the hallway. "Mommy?" Andy whispered, his hands claw gripping the back of her blouse with deathly intensity. "Why won't he die?" Karen didn't take time to answer. She stepped forward to hover over the crawling thing and pointed the smoking gun down. She fired the last 2 rounds directly into Chucky's chest. The body bucked with each shot. Trembled, and then went limp. Click, click. She pulled the trigger over and over again, seemingly unaware that she had fired the gun empty. She had to keep going, had to make sure. Was the monster gone even now? A noise behind her, and Karen spun towards the open apartment door with the gun raised and saw Mike's partner, Jack Santos, standing in the doorway with his hands raised. "Whoa, whoa, hey, hey, hey!" Karen lowered the gun, unsure what to say to this man who she knew would never believe her. He opened his mouth to speak and then stopped when Mike's voice rang out from Karen's bedroom, calling her name. Karen, Andy, and Jack ran to see Mike sitting up against the bed, his face pale and covered in sweat. Jack took the scene in and picked up the telephone receiver on the bedside table. He dialed fast and spat out quick orders to the person on the other end of the line. He was kneeling down beside his partner within seconds. "An ambulance will be here within 10 minutes, he said. "Shit, Mike. What the hell happened here?" Mike shifted, grimacing in pain.
The kid was right. The doll is alive. It almost got the 3 of us.
Jack glanced around between the 3 of the bedraggled people and laughed without humor. "You're shitting me, right?"
Do I look like I'm shitting you?
Mike asked.
You don't believe me? Go ahead and take a look. The damn thing is scattered all over the hall, but don't touch it. Don't you touch one part of it.
"Okay, you got it," Jack replied, standing up and walking out of the room. He sniffed, wrinkling his nose at the smell of burnt cordite and something far fouler that still lingered on the air. He looked around, saw the scattered bits of the scorched toy, and stepped over to the head. "Jesus, what did they do to this thing?" He bent over and tapped the top of the decapitated head with one finger, and then laughed at himself. Mike really had him going there for a second. He picked up the head and carried it into the room, tossing it up and down like a basketball. He walked over to the small television set Karen had against one wall and set the head on top of it, its single eye staring at them all. "Okay, Mike," Jack said, patting the head with his hand. "I'd like you to look at this thing. There's no way it's alive." Mike put protective hands around Karen and Andy.
I thought I told you not to touch it.
"Come on, Mike," Jack snorted, slapping the head harder. "Look, it's dead!" The sound of metal grating against metal filled the room, and suddenly the air vent in the wall beside Jack's head flew free, and Chucky's headless torso burst out to wrap its fingers around Jack's windpipe. "Kill him!" Chucky's head began to shout. "Yes, kill him! Don't let go!" Jack felt metal splinters like jagged fingernails seeking to dig their way beneath his skin and tear his throat out. He reached to pull the hand free and spun, sending the body and head flying across the room. The head landed in the far corner, facing them, and it continued to shriek orders to kill and to maim. Jack stumbled back and fell against the wall near the others, his eyes wide, his mouth unable to form intelligible words. The body was raising up in response to Chucky's demands. Mike glanced down, saw the .25 caliber pistol that Karen had dropped a few minutes before. He picked it up and worked the slide to clear the jam, and then aimed it at the body. "Shoot him in the heart!" Karen said, pulling Andy close. Mike took a deep, steadying breath and squeezed the trigger. The report seemed muffled in comparison to the bigger .38. The round struck the torso in the middle of its chest, passing through and splattering the wall behind it with the thick, viscous fluid. "No!" Chucky screamed. "God, no, not now!" The torso collapsed to the carpet, leaking black blood, and went still. Chucky looked up at them as the evil light seemed to fade from his blue eyes. "Hi, I'm Chucky." The voice changed then, as if Charles Lee Ray had finally gone, and was replaced by the pleasant timbre of a real good guy.
"Wanna play?"
Silence filled the apartment then, as each stared at the doll's remains. Finally, Mike turned to Jack, as the sound of approaching sirens filled the room.
"So, do you believe me now?"
Jack put a hand to his bleeding throat and nodded. "Yeah, but who's gonna believe me?" Mike shrugged.
"We can worry about that later. Come on, help me up."
Karen and Andy put arms around him and pulled him to his unsteady feet. Jack moved to his side and took Andy's place, supporting most of the man's weight as they stepped out into the hall and started for the apartment door. Andy lagged behind, turning in the bedroom door to stare at Chucky's remains. It wasn't over. He knew in his heart Chucky would move, any second now. "Hey, kiddo," Karen said as she came back to take his hand. "Come on, we're going to go to the hospital with Mike." She flicked the bedroom light off, plunging the room into shadow. Chucky's blue eye shone out like a star in the night. Karen grabbed the doorknob and began to pull it closed. Andy shifted as it swung along its path, keeping his eye on the evil doll until the last second. The end. Okay, Slashaholics, this has been chapters 20 and 21, the conclusion of the fan novelization of Child's Play by Jeremy Terry. And I gotta say, Jeremy, I really hope in the future, like after Jason Goes to Hell and maybe Hellraiser 2, whatever you got planned, I hope you will revisit Chucky, because out of all the slashers, he's gotten the worst treatment in book form. Maybe Leatherface has gotten the worst, but Chucky's right there with him. So we would love, I know I'm speaking for myself and I think for a lot of fans of the channel and you, that we would all love to read or hear your version of The Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, all of them in the future. The sky's the limit, buddy, because this was great. You took a classic slasher movie that really deserved a book, and you gave us one. You put your hard work and talent and creativity into this book, and you brought the story to life, and it wasn't just a carbon copy of the movie. You took chances, which is what I want to see from fan novelizations. That's what I look for. I look for taking chances, gambling, a little bit, throwing out your own creative, original ideas into this story that we all know and love and making it your own while still delivering a novelization for the hardcore fans of it, and also adding a little something new to it. Not too little. It's got, it can't be too little, it can't be too much. You found the perfect balance, and I think everybody who's listened to this book so far loves it as much as I did. I really enjoyed the intensity of these last 2 chapters. I loved getting into Chucky's head. I loved finding out how he got to the apartment, with that other boy and everything. That was pretty cool. What he was thinking when all this was going on. And just the intensity of that final showdown with everybody was great. Jack showing up and not believing it until, he's literally getting his throat ripped out. Just an amazing job, Jeremy. You really knocked this one out of the park. You brought us home. The conclusion was amazing. Totally one of my favorite books of all time here on the channel. It deserves to be published. It deserves to be the official novelization, in my opinion. I think Matthew Costello would be proud of your work on this. The guy that wrote part 2 and 3. I even told him that when you started writing this about it, I did an interview with him, and he thought it was really cool that somebody was taking up the mantle and writing this fan novelization. And I hate even calling it a fan novelization because, like I said, it is just as good as any novelization of any slasher that I've read here on the channel, if not better than most. Great job. Cannot wait to narrate Jason Goes to Hell that you're working on. Please, everybody, please drop a thank you to Jeremy in the comment section below. This was a really great job by him. It took a lot of time and effort for him to make this for us, so please send him your thanks in the comments. Let us know what you thought of the book, tonight's chapter, and the book as a whole in the comment section below. We'd really appreciate to hear from you. I love hearing from you guys and gals and discussing these with you. If you're listening to the unabridged version, thanks for sticking it out. Hope you enjoyed it. You just finished listening to book number 69 on the channel, folks. I mean, come on, right? Or as Chucky would say, it's book number 69. I'm going to miss not getting to voice Chucky for a while. I might not do the best Chucky impersonation, Brad Dourif impersonation, but sometimes I feel like I'm nailing it with a laugh, and when he's really getting pissed, and cussing and stuff, maybe I get a little closer, but I'm doing the best I can, kind of made it my own. I wanted to keep just enough, at least a small percentage of what Brad sounds like with my version of Chucky. That way at least there's like something familiar about it. And I hope I brought that to the table, because if not, I can see how it could be hard to listen to. But yeah, just let me know what you all thought. I'll be back very soon with more slasher mayhem here on the channel. Be sure to check out all the audiobooks. We're Friday the 13th part 7 I think is going to be like number 70, if I'm getting the numbers right on these, for the channel. Lots of cool podcasts here on the channel. Great movie riffs where we make fun of really shitty or cheesy horror movies, and sometimes slasher movies that we actually like but still have some fun, poking fun at them. Lots of stuff to enjoy here. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel, click the like button, drop a comment, and please consider supporting the channel through Patreon, or doing a PayPal donation, Cash App donation, or even ordering a $10 Cameo video from the channel, where I can wish you a happy birthday, anniversary. If you want to ask some questions, I can answer them through it, pep talk, whatever you need. You can order the video and ask for it to be from me, from any of the other people that work here on the channel, or me doing a video in the voice of Chucky or Freddy or any character that I've done a voice for here on the channel. Like I said, it's only $10 for a Cameo video. If you look at the description below or the pinned comments, you'll find the Patreon, the Patreon address, the email to donate through PayPal, the Cash App handle to make a donation, and the address to go to Cameo and order a Cameo video from us. It's all the information is there. You're going to be helping this channel continue to go and grow for years to come. It's the only way to fund the channel, since we can't be a YouTube partner because of the content. So we can't monetize the channel for ad money. So please consider doing that. Have a great night. And until next time, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80 slasher librarian saying, thanks for listening. Be excellent to each other. Remember, the sun never sets on those who ride into it. And for this last little Chucky narration, most importantly, you can't keep a good guy down.